Solmaz is currently enrolled as a PhD student at the International Graduate School Heritage Studies here at BTU Cottbus-Senftenberg. She is by profession an urban heritage conservationist, and now she is doing her thesis on Iranian bazaar as public space. She's also a scientific assistant at the Urban Management Chair at BTU. Solmaz's research area is living urban heritage management with a focus on public space, social sustainability, and gender issues in historic urban areas. And today we will hear her presentation under the title Transformation of Urban Governance Strategies in the Face of Modernization and Globalization. The floor is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you for the introduction, Daria. So today I'm going to talk about transformation of urban governance strategies in the face of modernization and globalization. And I would like to apologize on behalf of Professor Weidner because she was not able to be here. So the types of challenges that modernist approach of dealing with the city has resulted, and now as the urban governors who have inherited these challenges and problems created by this modernist approach of urban governance, as the ones who have inherited that from our last generation planners. We are dealing with challenges like population growth, environmental problems and climate change, limited financial resources, to deal with the rapidly changing world, and the cities have to adapt themselves with economic modernization, which is very fast and continuous. We have informal urban development, and we have problems in adapting the cities with continuous and rapid technological modernization. And these are only just some examples of the challenges that urban governance profession is dealing with. So because of these challenges, the current urban governance discourse on the academic level and also on practical level has come to this conclusion, or come to this new idea to change the government approach and give rise to a new participatory urban governance approach. This urban governance approach is replacing a coordinative approach to that state-centered and centralized top-down government approach of urban planning. And we have came to this conclusion because today the government or the city governors have realized that they are no longer able, or not as able as they thought that they were, to direct the affairs of the cities. And so they have changed their approach to governance in the face of the complexity and conflict and social change that we are facing after modernization and due to globalization. So this basically means that organizations, and by organizations we mean not only governments, also other organizations involved in urban development, have to or decided to empower themselves by blending their resources with each other, blending skills of other parties, and to go on with the development altogether. And some main reasons of the current shift in the urban governance discourse are some very important reasons are urban globalization, economic globalization, cultural globalization, and political decentralization, that is happening in the cities. By economic globalization, we have now central global cities that are economically getting more independent from the states. So we have competition of cities, of global cities that are competing, and the cultural globalization also enforces it. Now we have cities that compete for achieving higher city brands, for attracting more social and economic investments, and attract businesses. And therefore they tend to, especially in the first world or in the more developed countries, the large cities or mega cities are tending to delink themselves from their national economics, and sometimes even they are delinking themselves from the national states. And also, due to political decentralization, we have realized that we need to answer to local problems, because the cities are getting more independent, and the urban governance as a profession and as a field needs to answer or find solutions for local needs, and find solutions that are people-based and place-based. And therefore, we need to be able to coordinate stakeholders involved in different layers of cities. So cities have like functional and social structures that are interacting with built structures and natural and biological structures. And the task of an urban manager or someone who is involved with urban governance is to coordinate the interaction of the stakeholders involved with different aspects of the city change. And so how is this possible? How are we going to coordinate all these stakeholders which have complex interactions? And today, one of the most important challenges are the involvement or making the citizens, local citizens, interested in cooperating with the governance system. So basically the participation levels have three phases. The first phase is participation of public actors in opinion formation and decision making. So participation doesn't mean that we call for participation in the final phases when we have made the decisions. Now we want to implement. Then we invite the public actors to participate. This is a kind of approach that is very common. And what I'm talking about now is only theoretical. But actually, what goes on is that this is missed. So the public actors are not involved in the phase that the main ideas are being created and the decisions are being made. And then cooperating in dealing with duties in relation with others. So involving local people or public actors should also include involving them in deciding about separation and distribution of duties, who should do what. and how much is the share of each actor. And also observation of the process of participation and observation of the outcome, because when a project is finished and so the government party or for example, the administrator side is finished with the project, now it gives it to the people, but the project is never or should never be considered as finished. It should be observed and it should be monitored and it should be re-evaluated and if necessary changed. But this should usually be the task of the locals. So a project is never finished. The type of participation of locals basically can be direct and indirect. Formally, they can public participation can be like citizens participating in citizen-state joint projects, like investment projects that are announced by the state. And they should have legally the possibility of petitions if they are not satisfied with the process. And in some cities and in some countries, there are legal possibilities that make it possible for the citizens to directly take part in the decision. When a project is being done or the decisions are being made about a local project. And so indirectly it's like normal voting. For example, voting for the members of a city council. Informal participation, examples of informal participation could be running citizen initiatives, civic engagements, and influence on public opinions by press and news, having internet forums, and talking with target groups that are affected by the projects, but the kind of activities that are run by the local people and are independent from the government. And these are just some examples of citizen participation directly and indirectly in informal and formal manners. But the main challenge is how to make it possible, how to make this citizen involvement possible. So the first step is to identify them as planners. You have to identify the involved stakeholders. They can be investors, owners, renters, they can be landlords, they can be car factories, they can be drivers, they can be tourist industry investors or tourists themselves. So it is important to really do a research and identify all the involved stakeholders, like taxpayers, social groups, political parties and NGOs, and neighborhood communities and such part players in one single urban project. Basically, we can say that they can be categorized in four types of stakeholders. So they can be politicians, they can be urban administrator parties, they can be civil society or owners, or if you want to see it in a more detailed way, so politicians like the government, the regimes, the states, the parties involved with the government, the opposition sides, sometimes even it depends on the political context, The urban administrators, such as different specialized urban planning agencies, urban planners, individual urban planners, financiers, and owners like private developers, users, investors, civil society, committed groups, and the groups who are affected by the project. So the real challenge is usually, because they are always there, the committed like social activists. They want to be involved. But the main challenge is convincing the affected groups to be involved. And this is a big challenge, and it is very important because of two main reasons. Because the market sector and the government sector are of a short-term nature. The market changes and the government also changes. So government parties come and go. But this is the local community, this is the civil society who stays in a neighborhood. And we are talking about places. So they are the ones who are supposed to share the values of the society and safeguard the values of the society. And the other quality that makes this civil society so important is that they don't have political and economic interests. So the meaning of civil society is this: they are active for the values of the society. They don't have individual political and economic interests. They are not investors. If they are, so they are not civil society. They won't be under this category. So they will be the real safeguarders because they are not supporting any kind of political or economic interest. They are the true safeguarders of the values of the community. But the situation is not always so harmonized like that. Now I'm going to talk about some real challenges that we usually face in inviting the local people for participation in the real projects. So networking for a sustainable process, a process that can continue, is very hard. So you cannot always, as a coordinator, as the urban manager, you cannot always support the networks between different actors. And mobilizing the publics is also very, very, very hard. For example, we have some toolboxes or some solutions for making people interested in coming to the meetings and being active. For example, I remember an example like from Germany. They have invited people with who were involved in the neighborhood or who lived in the neighborhood with different professions, and they have paid the equal amount of the money that they could earn according to their profession in the period that they are spending time in the meeting. So this is if there are financial possibilities, some city governors can do this. Or for example, in Cottbus, for planning this, the Altmarkt, they have made models of the future and the existing plaza or the Altmarkt. And they have invited the people in one day and and distributed like modeling materials like papers and glue and everything to be able to make their own models or make a model together. So making it like as an urban event could be a solution for making people interested in participating in such events and roundtables, but it's not always easy. But sometimes the citizens are resisting, and they're not just interested, and sometimes the planners and authorities are not interested. And sometimes they have like misunderstanding, communication problems. And in some cases, the planning process is not transparent enough. And in many cases, individuals are trying to get dominant because they appear as the members of civil society, but they are actually associated with other investors, and they are associated with political parties, and they are using the name of the civil society for certain interests. And sometimes the process is not managed well, and the responsibilities are not just clear. And in most of the cases, because the money is limited and the time is limited, creating all these networks and creating transparent conversation will not be possible. But what can be controlled is understanding the main problem that we are facing. And I'm going to give an example of this chart or diagram, a real example from my thesis. Usually the governments tend to involve the people in not in the idea forming or planning or decision making phases. They announce for participation in implementing phase, because they are interested first in because implementation needs money. So they announce for financial participation. And the implementation phase is close to the end, so they want to make some marketing, or they want to they want some propaganda, or appearing as so how cool we have done a participatory urban planning process. So and they call it participation, but the truth is that this is the real engagement process. So, and this is the participation process that is actually happening. So, this is minimum in the phases of idea forming and planning and decision making, and the implementation has the higher chance of that governments announce for participation. But the reality is that in the actual outcome of the project, the participation, the result of the participation of the citizens is minimum in the implementation, because now they are only investors in the decisions that have already made by the government, and they had no chance in the forming of the central idea of the project. So the best influence that the citizens can have is in this part, but this is not the actual case in many examples. Now, after this theoretical introduction, I'm giving you some real example from Iran, Tabriz, a city in Iran. So, Tabriz city is in the northwest of Iran, in the eastern Azerbaijan province of Iran. Yeah. And now I'm just going to talk about the city center of Tabriz with the bazaar or the old market at its center. And I'm going to explain how the modernist approach, urban development, has influenced the bazaar and the inner city area in the Tabriz, and how it has changed the economic dynamics of the city that has resulted in physical dynamics and resulted in the current situation of Tabriz. And then I'm going to give some hints about the possible solutions. So how the modernization has affected the city center of Tabriz, or the historic city and the bazaar of Tabriz, was that because it was so fast, the modernization, the modernist urban planning happened suddenly in Iran. So the city started to grow in early 20th century. And the inner city, the development in the inner city started to lag behind the development in the modern city. So this has happened because the inner city was so associated with the bazaar, and as so many urban scholars or urban researchers has mentioned, there were a kind of a duality in terms of lifestyle and ideology. So the modern outskirts and the traditional old city. And there were some political problems, particularly among the Bazaris and the states, because Bazaris are historically a very powerful political group, very influential. And that's why after the constitution, because the economics and the political issues started to be intensively centralized, these Bazari groups, which are linked with each other all through the country, or not just in one or two cities, started to be considered by the governments or by the central state as a threat. So the state started to make them weaker and weaker. For example, before the Islamic Revolution, it was direct by running modernist economical policies and trying to cut the bazaars. And after the Islamic Revolution, it was rather indirect by targeting the social networks in the bazaar. So because these social networks created a solidarity between the Bazaris. And with the collapse of that solidarity, the bazaar lost its integrity. So it became weak after the process of modernization. But they still exist, but not as powerful as before. And also urban and commercial modernization contributed to making the bazaar as a location weak, because of course some individual bazaris became so powerful, but the ones who were associated with the government or with the state, but bazaar as a location started to get weaker and weaker, and because the area around it was highly associated with the bazaar, it also went down with the bazaar. Also urban planning, like construction of modern streets that I'm going to talk about, contributed in isolating the bazaar and making the development process in the bazaar slower than the city outside the inner city area. So this happened, and this caused the bazaar was not anymore capable of responding to the new volume of the commerce. And also because of the new streets, the high quality retail was replaced or was moved to the street. And that resulted in bazaars becoming wholesale centers, low-quality retail centers, and like places of workshops and places where people with lower income go for shopping. And this happened simultaneously with the rise of investment in the outer city, not in the inner city. So the centrality of commercial activities in the inner city was maintained, but the investment was in the outer city. So a kind of commercialization of the inner city happened because the bazaar was still working, but the new investments, new social and economic investments was not in the bazaar, in that location, was outside the inner city. And that created kind of this situation. So this is the bazaar, imagine, and this is the inner city. So the inner city acted as a block, or if you would like, as a filter, limiting the social and economic flow of capital from in the inner city and the modern part of the city. So it kind of isolated the bazaar from the rest of the city, and that's why today bazaar has lost its former importance as the main commercial center of the city, or the main public place of the city, of course. The other thing that happened due to centralization of politics and economic centralization was the change in the stakeholder or actor relationship, power relationships in the bazaars. I made it through literature review and analysis of documents only about Tabriz bazaar. This is the power level, very qualitative, low, medium, high. And this is the territory level, like the ownership degrees. And this is like estimated through historic documents, and also this through social history of the city. So as you see, the bazaari and landlords who owned most of the lands, this is the ownership part, were the most powerful actor in forming and making decisions in the changes, in the physical changes or use changes of the bazaar. And the ulama who supervised waqf properties also were in charge of managing some waqf properties. And they were more important than regular publics because before constitution, we didn't have such notion as public property. Everything was the property of the king. So we only had the public rights after the constitution, when a new nation and a new state was defined in Iran. And it also affected the urban governance and management of urban areas, such as the bazaar area. This is the new power relation. This is more accurate than the old one, because I had living actors that I could interview. So as you see, this is the state-centered model of governance or management of the affairs of the bazaar. So this defines who has the more authority and power to make decisions about changes, physical changes in the bazaar, and changes in use of spaces in the bazaar. So the most powerful actor is the state, with its branches such as ICHHTO is the Cultural Heritage Organization, the Road and Urban Development Organization, the municipality, the provincial governance, and also OGAF organization that is in charge of supervising the endowment properties, the WAQF properties, is very strongly, it's not a state organization, but it is very strongly associated with the state, because the head of this organization is directly selected by the supreme leader. So, and there is no council or there is no voting involved in the decisions made by OGAF. So it's very powerful, very rich, and very independent. And then we have the Bazaari community, the people who work in Bazaar, and the Bazaar community, because the Bazaaris are only the toughest or the richest people or merchants in the Bazaar. And they have a council, and they have the possibility of electing their own representatives, and like taking part in the meetings that state announces. And this is the regular publics, again the lower ones, because so actually they are not at all directly involved in management affairs in the bazaar. They have just some chances by electing the members of city council, and that's it. And as I interviewed the Bazaaris, they were very angry from moving from here to here, of course, because they have the highest share of the ownership in the bazaar, and they are experiencing an increase in their role in decision making. And also regular publics were not very happy, because although, and after the constitution they have, constitution was in 1906. Sorry that I forgot to mention. But they are not actually involved in real decision makings. And as I interviewed also the managers and the state managers, the heritage managers, they perceive participation as financial participation. So for example, when you ask them how involved people are people or regular publics, the answer is no, Bazaaris are so rich, so they can participate, so we don't need regular public. So they mean money. So they don't perceive participation as in the process of forming new ideas for new projects. And so as you see here is an owner-centered, not very cooperative system that we had before the Constitution, and the present is also a non-inclusive government or state-centered system of governance that we have, for example, in the bazaar. And now Having all these in mind, I would like to talk about a little bit how construction of or like modern urban development projects have created certain financial or economic dynamics in the city center of Tabriz, which is here. That has caused some challenges and problems that I'm going to talk about. How the introduction of these new streets. This is the Tabriz Bazaar area, which is about 20 hectares or 90 hectares, something. And it's here. And here is the map that I've prepared by comparing different aerial pictures of Tabriz and also some documents talking about when certain streets were constructed in Tabriz. So the yellow one is the first modern street in Tabriz. And a street in an old city in 1925 means a sudden access of a dense urban fabric to the capital or to different cities. So it means like income of money and capital for the city with a bazaar at its center. And the orange streets were constructed afterwards between 1925 and 1932. So they were not, so the period between constructing them was not so too much. So what happened was that after having this access to the flow of commodities, goods, and vehicles, the rich merchants that were here in the Qaysariya Park, in the top part of the bazaar, abandoned or sold their properties and moved to here. All the carpet traders, all the gold merchants, they moved to the edges of the new streets. And after about 7 years, the other streets, minimum of 7 years, the other streets have started to be constructed. But because 7 years is a relatively long period, the new streets didn't attract the wealthy merchants anymore. So as they settled down here, they stayed, and the situation didn't change after the construction of these other access possibilities. So what happened was basically that the shopping malls started to be constructed at the edges of the streets, and this is the river. And there were two bridges with the bazaar continuing on the bridges to the other side. This is the upper side of the bazaar. This is the central core of the bazaar. So because these were constructed, we have a block of the river which disconnects the southern and northern parts. We have the residential areas here. So this actually makes these new streets useless in commercial terms. We have here some other blocks, mostly commercial. This is residential. I mean, this was residential. And these are all commercial blocks. So the main access was here. So as I will show you, the most economic activity of the bazaar is concentrated here. And at the other parts, we have, before the bazaar is now a World Heritage Site. Before its inscription in the World Heritage Site, we were facing lots of problems, vacant spaces here. We still have lots of vacant spaces and low quality, in terms of physical situation, spaces here. And in 1995, the government, or the urban government in Tabriz started to run some regeneration projects to face with these problems. So they have introduced a big commercial project here, and also a large commercial project here, complexes, a very large complex here, and some regeneration projects here and here to solve the problem of this disconnection of the bazaar with the other parts of the city. But actually, and this is the bridges that were reconstructed actually after 1995. And this is the inner view of one of the bridges. But it didn't work. The commercial complexes that were constructed here didn't work because, as the interviews that I have done with the Bazaris suggest, it was investor-centered, the kind of approach of these projects. So the system was like that they announced for financial participation of investors, and as the return of their benefit, they gave us shops and areas in these parts. But because they were not merchants, they were not able to develop good strategies for using these spaces. So now these spaces are like this, empty, dead, big boxes around the bazaar. So it was not possible to solve the problem. They removed the blocking parts that I showed you in gray and replaced them with other new blocking areas that are useless and just limit the access, visual and physical access to the bazaar. And and these are the new parts, and these are the new parts that are now I showed you. And this map shows the pedestrian flow in the bazaar areas, like counting number of people who pass from different pathways to show the activity level of different areas of the bazaar. The darker areas are the areas that are like rush zones. And let me give you some numbers. I forgot the numbers. So the rush zones are 1,000 to 2,000 people pass these areas per hour. The very light zones are like 10 to 100 people pass these areas per 1 hour. And comparing this map with the land price and economic exchange rate in different zones of the bazaar gives us this map, which is the economic kind of fertility, economic productivity of different zones in the bazaar. The darker areas are the areas that are more economically active, and the lighter areas are the areas that are less active economically. And I just explained this to show you how the introduction of certain streets with certain periods of time between them can really change all the dynamics in a city or in a city center. And if we want to talk about the whole city center, we can say that after the introduction of these streets, what happened was that the land price in the areas at the edges of the streets went high suddenly, And as people started to, so these lands became economically so important because they could be shops, they could be commercial complexes. So reconstructions started to happen here at the edges. And with the further constructions, so the reconstructions with the lighter color started to go to the core of the blocks that were created by the streets. So as you see here, the untouched parts of the cores of each block are basically the historic fabric of Tabriz city, which is shrinking even today. So we have a process of shrinking and reconstruction and change in the urban fabric morphology coming from the edges to the core of these blocks. And Bazaar is one of these islands. I call them islands because they're isolated from the other more active parts. And these islands are shrinking and Bazaar is one of them. But the difference of Bazaar with these other islands is that Bazaar is a World Heritage Site. It is not possible for it to shrink physically. And because the regulations doesn't allow. And it is also still an active commercial complex. So the meaning and the function of Bazaar is shrinking. So it's shrinking from a high-class commercial complex to a very low-class commercial complex with a very, very low level type of retail shops and storage spaces and workshops. And it has been shrinking from the main public space of the city from a tourist attraction and a World Heritage Site, unfortunately, only. So if you want to see how the new constructions look like, you can see some examples. And the cores that are untouched and are disappearing are like this. So, because of this process that I just explained, a kind of isolation has happened between the old city and the modern growing city, and also the bazaar and what the bazaari people, the people who work in bazaar told me, the world outside the bazaar, because they believe that the real commerce and the real business is not in the bazaar, it's only symbolic. The real business exists in the world outside the bazaar. And as I explained, it's losing its meaning and function in the city. And if I want to summarize the management systems that are the actor-power relationships that I just explained, we have moved through a pre-constitutional, traditional, owner-based, top-down management system to a state-centered, top-down management system. And none of these systems has helped or has developed a further step in improving and sustaining the meaning and the function of the bazaar and the central city. So the thing that we need is an inclusive urban management, and not only in the final phases, because you might have read, because Tabriz Bazaar has won the Aga Khan Prize for participatory conservation. But if you really read the statements and articles and documents, and I have also interviewed the prize winners, their approach also is a financial approach. So all they say is about, 10% was the share of the bazaari, the merchant's share for the projects, input for the projects. Now we have 80%. So they are making decisions. They are convincing the not regular publics who use the bazaar. They convince that this is good for you, and they get money. And they call it participation. So as I said, this is a real case of the diagram that I showed, that it's very easy for the managers to involve people at the final phases of the projects. And this is happening in Tabriz. So just for some giving some hints about the need for inclusive governance instead of the government approach, the two types of government approach, whether it is owner-based or whether it is state-based, is that we need to develop a culture of governance in our cities. We need to develop a culture of tolerance and facilitating the presence of diverse voices. And because if we don't, we lose the existing capitals, that we lose the capitals that we already have, and as like creative ideas, like financial investments, and all process or in all phases of the urban governance process. And seeing the bazaar as a public place that should be managed by the all public actors and state actors and owner actors is a kind of preventive protection, because we won't be able to make decision for the bazaar in the coming future. The state will probably, but the people who are there will stay there. And by developing such a culture of governance, we will put the bazaar in safe and powerful hands. And instead of making all assumptions that what should happen with the bazaar in future and making all decisions. So finally, for conclusion, I have prepared some criteria for successful inclusive citizen participation. Developing effort for support, finding the marginalized groups. For example, in Tabriz Bazaar, the marginalized groups are, as I studied, are women, because it's a very, very male-dominated place. And finding them and involving them, making them interested, and trying to coordinate the interaction, and not to make all the decisions, just act as urban planners, just act as the coordinators of the interaction of different actors. And give people early information, not at the final phases, for early participation. So if you don't inform them, they will not come. So you should think ahead as planners. And create processes of joint planning of participation. So even you should plan how to participate together. You shouldn't plan how to involve people. You should always also plan with them how the process of participation can happen. And this is called a process-oriented citizen participation. So involving them from the phase that the main ideas are forming. And stabilization of citizen participation by regulations, and enhancing the culture that, as I said, because as it is a authoritative site, they have a steering committee. They can have local, within the management plan that they have, they can have regulations for the bazaar, and approve it in the council of the bazaar, and also the inner city. And making the results of participation, once together we achieve something, making it binding. Because after the project is finished, some actors who want to be more dominant can change the results after everybody is finished and gone. So the message here is that the project is never finished. So there should be a steering group who always monitors the achievements of the project. So these were some hints about the criteria of inclusive citizen participation. Thank you.